Chapter 20. Heavens woke up lying on the side facing the desk, almost falling out of his bed. Along his back and his legs he felt the warmth and softness of Amy's skin and her arm on his. To be able to both sleep, they had to spoon the entire night, and if one turned around, the other had to turn too. Her deep breath poured over his neck. She always slept longer than him. He just needed less sleep, more than an hour less on average. Heavens regularly fell asleep after her and woke up before her. He didn't mind. In fact, quite the opposite. He enjoyed those endless minutes when she slowly surrendered to the night, her breath going slower and her arms and legs going limp, or the twitch when she entered the world of dreams, while he laid awake, hardly believing his luck, that she loved him, and sometimes, later on, he heard her mumbling something unintelligible in her sleep. And he could forever guess what she was talking about, what part of their shared life she carried over into the night. Not once he took these moments for granted, as if it was a new experience every time, and somehow it was. The same was true for the mornings, when he woke up first, when he opened his eyes and realized either he had stayed over at her place or Amy at his, like today. There was nothing that got him up and out of bed, away from her. Even if he had to go to the washroom, he waited as long as he could. There was no sneaking back to bed. She didn't wake up when he got up, but as soon as he left the bed, she sprawled out, and there was simply no space to hop back in without waking her up. So he concentrated on the moment, how they touched and how her breath washed over him, and listened to the muffled bicycle bells in the street and sometimes to a bird on his balcony. Somebody laughed out loud in the street, that much he could hear. Judging the light outside, it was about 9 a.m. He never slept past 10. He just couldn't, even if they stayed up late. The idea of going to bed and waking up together every day made him smile. Knowing a double bed wouldn't fit in here made him stop. More than once he had measured it out, always coming to the same conclusion. He needed a desk, and the space to get to the balcony around a double bed would be too small and awkward. But what if the bed was higher? On stilts. He opened his eyes wide. Where did this thought come from? Why didn't he think of this earlier? This was a possibility he hadn't considered yet. His eyes wandered up to the ceiling. It wasn't very high. All he needed to be able to was sitting at the desk, so the bed could rest half a foot over him. He completed the picture by seeing him ducking and sitting down, seeing her ducking and stepping out on the balcony. He would even gain more space where his bed was right now. A second desk for Amy. He whispered, "This is it." To get onto the bed, he would throw out the shelf. The stuff inside could be stored anywhere, top of the closet. Instead, 4 or 5 steps would lead up to the high bed. The term loft bed he had heard before as well. He couldn't remember who told him about it. Sure, they wouldn't be able to sit up straight once the bed was lifted, but that was a sacrifice he'd be willing to make. Wouldn't she? Thinking of sacrifice, he looked over to the desk where their devices sat to recharge overnight. He suppressed the urge to get up. Not yet. He wanted to continue reveling further in the fantasy of sharing a loft bed with Amy. Would she be up for it? They never considered this option, and now he couldn't believe neither of them had ever brought it up. Maybe she had a reason? He took a deep breath and pictured himself lying up there. They could even look outside the window, probably peering by the balcony down to the street. That idea made him feel a little queasy. Oh no, would that keep him from enjoying sharing a loft bed with her? Would his fear of heights ultimately thwart every single notion to move together? Instantly he drew curtains into his fantasy. Then nobody could see them either. Yeah, curtains. Curtains and a loft bed. He would build it himself. They could build it together. What a project. They could start tomorrow after college. On the way home, they could swing by the hardware store, buy a bunch of 2x4s, and let them saw there to length. Then they would be delivered a day later. They could also start today. The store should be open until afternoon. They could have breakfast and then measure the dimensions and walk over and then keep walking a little further to Mattress Madness. Between the two, they should come up with some money for a new double mattress and the wood. Amy still slept, unaware of the wonderful world he imagined. He would surprise her with a loft bed idea. He would make breakfast for them and tell her when they sat down. Carefully, Heavens rolled out of bed. Her arm glided off of his, and to avoid a drop, he gently lowered her hand onto the sheets. Amy's eyes didn't even twitch. She continued her deep sleep, breathing calmly while traveling through her dreams. Did she ever dream blurred? With all the ICM photos she shot and edited for hours, that was a real possibility. He wanted to ask her later. Only her face and shoulder were visible. For him the most beautiful face, although she herself would say her nose was a little too snub. Not for him. Everything was just right in its proportion and shape. What he missed when she slept were her dimples when she smiled. He smiled and realized he was crouching in front of the bed looking at her, marveling her timeless beauty worth a painting. He stood up before she would suddenly wake up and open her eyes, seeing him staring at her. Not creepy at all. Heaven's hand fished his boxer shorts and his shirt out of the pile of clothes they had thrown over the chair by the desk. His and hers mixed like a deck of cards. He pictured the loft bed from this perspective. He even pretended to duck to see how that felt, and sure it wouldn't be something he'd like. He would prefer a bigger apartment, but it wouldn't be a high price to live together with Amy. She took a deep breath and turned around in the bed, showing now her neck. He woke up his D9 and opened the Sacrifice app. A few more payments had arrived, but nothing to write home about. He accepted the donations, put down the device, and tiptoed to the kitchen area with the washer and the dryer, the tiny table for two, and the even smaller shower in the corner. The only talent of the interior designer must have been efficiency. Fridge, stove, and sink were on the other side. Standing in the middle, there was just enough space for two people to shimmy by each other, and they had to tuck in their bellies. He turned his head again where the high bed would be. Less light would come in. The bed would block the larger part of the window, especially with the much-needed curtains on top. He couldn't care less. His hands found the mocha pot. He took it apart, swiped the old coffee ground with his finger into the green recycle bin, and rinsed it all in the sink with as little water and noise as possible. Amy hadn't moved when he checked. With a tiny spoon, he scraped the fresh coffee out of the grinder, happy he didn't have to use it, as it was way too loud and would have woken her up. He would have not risked that. He would have made tea instead. He placed the mocha pot on the burner and turned it to max. Next to the mocha pot, he put the saucepan with the milk. For breakfast, he chose the multigrain bread and honey. While the espresso shot up, he foamed the milk and poured it into the 2 cups. Then he tried his luck to create an espresso heart in the foam, but failed twice. He set the cups down by the plates on the little table, and then he walked over to Amy. She hadn't moved. He quietly bent down and closed in on her neck. "What are you doing?" she said without moving. "I thought you were still sleeping." "Heavens, I didn't ask what you were thinking. I asked what were you doing?" I wanted to kiss your neck." She looked over her shoulder and said in a playful, angry way, "You wanted to wake me up?" "Yeah, you were deep asleep. Who can sleep with all the kitchen noise?" She turned around, keeping the blanket pulled up, covering her nakedness. "Sorry. What's for breakfast?" "I decided on cappuccino." "So I heard." She crossed her eyes. "Hey, don't be so—" "What? What?" "And honey bread." She smiled her first smile. She smiled her first smile, and it was as if only now the day began. "You got juice?" she asked. Yeah, he forgot to put it out and walked back to the kitchen. Behind him he heard her getting out of bed. He opened the fridge and looked at her silhouette in front of the window, the shape of her breasts for a moment visible from the side as she put on her shirt. People could see you, he said. So? You can cause an accident in the street. Am I so ugly? She ruffled through her hair. No, he shook his head. When she came over to him, she slowly lost her dark silhouette, and it was like somebody dialed in the saturation of the colors of her hair, her lips, her eyes, the washed-out pink shirt, and the mint green boxer short. She said, You look at me as if I'm the breakfast. I wouldn't mind. She quickly kissed his cheek and sat down at the table. Coffee smells great. He sat down on the other side and let her go first, dipping her knife into the creamy honey and spreading it over her slice of bread. He asked, What do you think of a high bed? She briefly glanced at him. Like a bunk bed? Am I too fat? Did I take too much of your precious room last night? No. She pretended to be focused on spreading the honey. Sure, I take it up. Just knock on the wood 3 times if you want to fuck me, then. Amy, no. They laughed. The conversation didn't go the way he mapped it out before. Sorry about last night, she said. You can have your bed for yourself, I don't want to inconvenience you. A loft bed, Amy, a loft bed, high bed, on stilts, a queen-sized loft bed, for both of us, beside each other. She put the knife down and looked up at him, checked his head left and right. Heavens! Did you fall out of bed and landed too hard? Was I that bad? No. What are you talking about then? She said and took a sip of her cappuccino without losing eye contact. We built a loft bed. There, right there. He pointed to the end of the studio apartment. Queen size. She took a bite from the honey bread and chewed. He did the same. Amy didn't wait until her mouth was completely empty. You'd have to ask the landlord for a permit. Why? It's a semi-permanent structure. How do you know? When I lived in that open sex commune, Amy! A friend wanted to build one with her partner Lynn. Have you ever met Lynn? Lynn, no, I don't think so. Yeah, she and whatever his name was, they wanted to build a high bed, a loft bed. For the same reason, he was too horny and Amy! However, they looked into it, asked the landlord, and he said no, because you need a bunch of anchors in the wall, and that makes it semi-permanent, and he didn't like it. He dropped his hands on his thighs and leaned back. But that doesn't mean my landlord sees it the same. You know landlords. What did your friends do? They split. Oh, she looked at him. Not for that reason. Heavens drank his coffee and set the cup down. I will ask him, if it is possible. Yeah, do that. You don't seem to be very excited about the idea. I'm not convinced you get the permit. If you get the permit, for the bed and me, I'm getting excited. Her foot found the back of his foot under the table. He closed his eyes. I sent him a message today. I can't see why that wouldn't be possible. I have the same mocha pot as you. I use the same coffee, but mine doesn't taste like yours. Maybe the water? The water is the same. Then it's caused by different pipes. You're in an older part of town. Older pipes, maybe? Maybe. Yuck. I don't even want to think about it. Enjoy your cappuccino, then. They finished their slices of bread and washed it down with the coffee. So where exactly you want the loft bed to be? She asked. Because she took her foot off of his, he decided, Come, I show you. She followed him, both holding their coffee, and they stopped an arm length away from the bed where it was. He gestured with his free hand. It would have the same length, plus the frame, obviously. First I thought double as wide, but then I thought it would be nice to have some room for a lamp and stuff. Yeah, and stuff. So I would build it wall-to-wall over the entire width. Wow. What would mean the frame could rest on 4 solid legs bolted into the studs in the wall for additional support. She nodded. And from there, he pointed at the shelf on his right, the steps would lead up to the top. And how high? I would say. He made a step forward and ducked as if the bed would be already there. About here would be the bottom of the frame, plus a mattress on top. Amy sipped her coffee and stepped under the imaginary high bed, ducking as well. Then there would be about that much headroom between bed and ceiling? She spread her arms out, one holding the coffee. Yeah, about that. Both were still needlessly ducking. Then, she said, I won't be able to fuck you being on top. And she took a sip of her coffee without breaking eye contact. Well, you still can be on top, but he tried to improvise. Or we could do it like that here. On the floor? Oh, on the balcony? She asked. Maybe not on the balcony, that would be. Or in the park? She put her coffee on the desk. Amy, not in the park. She took his cup out of his hand and placed it next to hers. Well, she said, I'm sure we'll find a place once the loft bed is up. Until then,